Welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments, the best growth mindset podcast recognized by Million Podcasts and ranked as a top mindset podcast by FeedSpot. We're proud to be in the top 1% on Listen Notes. Join Dr. Alisa Whyte as we explore powerful insights and strategies to elevate your mindset. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Mindset Mastery Moments, where we disrupt outdated thinking, reclaim personal agency, and we activate the mindset required to heal and live whole. I'm your host, of course, Dr. Alisa Whyte, your number one mindset disruptor. But let's be real for a second, right? So many high-functioning, driven people are doing everything right. The doctors, the supplements, the protocols, the productivity hacks. And they're still exhausted, inflamed, disconnected, or they find themselves stuck. And here's the uncomfortable question we're flipping today. What if, follow me along, the issue isn't that people are broken, but what if the issue is the system and the mindset we've been taught to adapt and adopt to for ourselves and think about ourselves? Today's conversation is one for anyone who has ever been told your labs are normal. Me, while their life felt anything but. I couldn't wait to have this guest because her work speaks to my journey. And if you'll tune in, she can save you a lot of time spinning your wheels trying to get better. I am joined by Dr. Karyn Shanks, MD, a physician, author, and a pioneer in whole person healing, whose work sits at the intersection of science, trauma-informed care, and deep human agency. She's a miracle. Really, for me, she needs to be my MD. Her new book is called Unbroken: Reclaim Your Wholeness, and it challenges the culture narrative that labels people as defective and replaces it with something far more empowering. Dr. Shanks doesn't just talk theory. She walked this journey personally and clinically. And today we're unpacking why chronic illness, burnout, and emotional disconnection are not personal failures, but intelligent signals asking us to listen differently. Let's get into it. Dr. Shanks, I want to thank you for being here at Mindset Mastery Moments. In your own words, tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that introduction. You just described me, my clients. I think one of the central questions about being a human being on this planet, who are we? So I've been a practicing physician for 35 years, and since the onset have evolved from the conventional roots, training as an internist, to becoming this whole person medicine, which means a complete departure from the way I was trained and kind of a rebirth into a new practice of medicine and healing that's all about whole people, not just parts and problems, but, what it means to be a whole person and how all that influences our state of health, the way we think about our health, the way we think about what our possibilities and potential are for healing, for being a person. My entire practice is focused on has been created to help people understand that and help them explore themselves as whole people and not just like looking at the immediate downstream problem that medicine tends to focus on, but who am I? What makes me who I am? What makes me feel the way I feel and have the symptoms that I have? And approaching it in a way that just makes more sense for our basic nature as human beings, and freed from some of the constraints of typical modern healthcare encounters, like time constraints and being, how everybody I think can relate to how it feels to be rushed through your story when you're visiting your doctor, or you're having more issues. Yeah, it's about creating a new medicine with my clients. I mean, they are helping me create. My clients are responsible for how I practice medicine today. They've taught me everything. So, yeah, that's just in a nutshell my motivation and why I wrote this book, Unbroken, Reclaim Your Wholeness, and my life's work.
Yes. You know, you said something your clients thought you. The difference, not to frown on any physician at all, but the thing is, you actually listened and you learned and you took action.
Yep.
You said something that's so important to me is being treated in parts.
Hmm.
And I believe you're a catalyst. And I've met another MD. We haven't published his episode yet, a couple weeks ago, where he is sort of focused on the same thing because what he says, I guess some of us, like me, I'm very thorough with my work. And so I feel like even though people have the responsibility to do what they came to you, they have their part to play and some people don't. But I still feel as someone who writes a prescription, not because we say in our camp that as a speaker, author, coach, you're writing prescriptions for people. You're filling, So when you're a medical doctor, obviously you do that all the time. But when you write that prescription, where does it go? What happens? How is it working? I, for one, have been had different doctors, hematologists. I mean, I don't see all of them anymore, but at one time I had everybody for blood, for my regular doctor, my OBGYN, my GYN, you name it. And they're all just were just treating me like different parts of my body, I was dealing with chronic autoimmune disease. At the time I had worst flare up that lasted the longest, Hashimoto's disease, and then the onset of lupus. So nobody could tell me what was wrong with me, but I was sick and they were giving me medicine. Again, not saying anything about the medical. That's what they're trained to do. That's what you all are trained to do. But when you come with this whole center approach, Dr. Shanks, I want to start here because so many people are listening and they internalize the belief system that something's wrong with me, right?
That's
That was
right.
me. I was like, okay, so they can't find what's wrong with me, then something's wrong with me. Why do you think feeling broken has become the default identity when someone gets sick or even burned out?
I think it's because we're taught to think of ourselves as parts. We have a
Mm,
mind, we have a body, we have a spirit. That's sort of a very simplistic foundational way to describe what I'm talking about. And medicine
mhm,
especially, and I think this is cultural and historical and political, but it's a major theme within Western medicine and how it's practiced because it really
mm,
it looks at people through the lens of physics and
mhm,
the laws of physical phenomena. It sees the body as a physical entity composed of parts. And that
mm,
was well established back during the scientific revolution, the 16 and 17 science, a subset of science, which became modern Western medicine, decided that they would view the body through the lens of physics, study the body
mm,
lens of physics. And so they basically thought about the human body as a
mhm,
machine and a machine
mhm,
parts. And if you study the smallest possible parts of that machine, you can then take that information and extrapolate it to the whole. So basically, I think from the moment we're born, our families, our
mhm,
communities, our culture, and then medicine tell us that we are different parts that are not connected.
mhm. I agree.
And so from the get-go, I think that's traumatizing.
Mhm,
We're not all connected. So when I go to the doctor, I'm a body and the rest of me doesn't matter. And I'm looked at as this physical entity, and my illness is looked at as this physical thing that's reduced to, you know, little parts and molecules. And it's also understood as the main focus in medicine is kind of the downstream manifestations of what's going on with us, which is a much larger thing. It's a much larger thing biologically, but it's also a much larger thing because everything about us, our emotions, how we think, our our energetics, it all influences.
right.
Every experience we've had as a human being gets funneled into our genetic expression and what happens to our bodies. And
Mhm,
relevant. It's all part of the story of illness. And
It is.
that's completely lost. That larger story is completely lost in modern Western medicine to our detriment.
Man, it does. To our detriment. Exactly.
We know childhood trauma, for instance, is a huge player in illness. And one of the
Hmm.
big areas is autoimmune disease.
Yes.
But that's not explored. That is not explored in the
It's
arenas of.
isolated as a separate.
That's right. That's right. But what if going back and resolving the ongoing stress of having
Hmm.
had felt trauma? What if that is a key part of the ultimate healing? And that's why the medicines aren't working,
I
right?
absolutely agree. It's just like pouring water on a horse's back once you ignore. And more, we're seeing that we're going back to the ACEs, we're going back to the childhood trauma, and that's actually accelerating any type of healing journey. It's almost like the physical things sort of disappear. And I'm seeing that even from my direct experience. And I love that you talk about that damaging cultural lens. So let's talk about how and sort of address the elephant in the room when it comes to the conventional medicine and the incredible crisis of care. Because often, like you said, they separate the symptoms from meaning and people in their own wisdom. From your perspectives, where did we lose the plot?
Yeah, where did we lose the plot? I think we lost it culturally. We
Mm,
those of us who are the patients were affected by that cultural
yeah.
narrative. And so
Yeah.
we don't know to exercise our agency around having our whole being appreciated
Yes.
by medicine and modern healthcare. But physicians were born into the same culture. So they don't
Mhm.
know that the model of healing that they're working with is not enough. I'm not gonna say it's wrong because I think there is a place for for very focused, parts-oriented, reductionistic medicine, and that's when we're severely ill, we've had a catastrophe, and we need life-saving treatment right now. So it's
Exactly.
genius, that's what it's good at, but it's not
Mhm.
at all good for chronic problems. But, you know,
Right.
we're all trapped in this story of many parts,
Mm.
many problems, disconnection from ourselves and our vast, whole nature. And those of us who can see that,
Mhm.
we wake up to, not, okay, where did it come from that we look at things through this lens? Like, why do we look at it through this lens? It doesn't seem to be working. It's really hard to wake up to narratives that are so entrenched in a culture and in our communities and our families and then in our own minds. It's really hard to see it as story until you until
Yes.
you learn everything's story. That's how the human brain operates. It's all one
Operates.
story. And the more the
Yes.
story is locked in and tenacious, and you're saying things like, this is how it is, this is how it's always been, those are signs that you're working with a story that should really be scrutinized and questioned.
That's the big part of my mindset work is question your story. Is it true? Where's the proof?
And it is all story.
Right.
And we never get to like the perfect story, but we can we
Right.
can we can get to
And
stories that
rewrite the
support us
story.
and
Yeah.
that support us, right? And that
Right.
get closer to who we really are.
Exactly. And so that's the magic of what you do. You translate complex science, epigenetics, neuroplasticity, trauma physiology into a language that people can actually use and rewrite the story that supports them.
That's
So
right.
here's my question for you. When you think about neuroplasticity and epigenetics, can you prove, how does that prove that we're never truly broken from your perspective?
Well, because what we've learned that our genetic expression, which runs all the structure, function, business of the body, is
Hmm.
flexible. We are, and it's responsive to every aspect of who we are. Every aspect of the terrain of human experience comes back and feeds back on genetic expression. And we
Mm,
know a lot about how that works, how we can direct certain health outcomes, various aspects of our structure or function with how we live. And I call it the terrain. So all these, which is all these aspects of our lives that have this impact on our genetic expression.
Mm-hmm.
We know a lot about that. Neuroplasticity is simply epigenetics as it relates to the human brain and the mind.
Mm,
We can change the structure and function of our brain. We
right.
can, through how we live, through how we operate.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with all this incredible, so the way I connect that to unbrokenness is that we have all this potential that's built right into our physiology to change, to move in a direction that we choose, to go from suffering and illness to resilience and robustness.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to do that. And
Right.
that's what we, so unbroken is the a story that neutralizes that old story that, we are broken when we're sick or suffering. There's something wrong with us rather than, oh, we're just hovering at this equilibrium point, influenced by so many parts of who we are, how we live, our experiences, our terrain, as I call it, that have brought us where we are today. It might be suffering illness, it might be resilience and robustness, but we have control over what that equilibrium place of equilibrium or balance is
Yeah.
based on our life experiences and our life's choices going forward. So,
Man.
yeah, so like that's the epigenetics and neuroplasticity are the engines of how we shift into robustness and resilience and a sense of greater wholeness.
I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. And I concur with that at 100%. I also love how you describe symptoms not as failures, but as intelligent messages. So important. I love that. That alone is a mindset shift.
It
Can you
is.
explain what you mean by the language of the body and why so many people have been trained to ignore the language of the body that when it speaks?
Yeah, so the language of the body is everything we experience in the body. A symptom, an
Mhm,
illness symptom is the language of the body. Okay, here's we need something. We have an unmet need. There's some kind of roadblock in place that keeps us from feeling better, from not having that symptom. Symptom is very intelligent, but and the same with feelings and sensations and all kinds of things that happen within the human body. Somehow we've been trained, and I think it's because of this disconnection we have with ourselves and that we are wise beings and we don't have to
mhm,
outsource our wisdom and our personal agency to so-called experts who we've learned to believe know more about our own bodies than we do, that we've been disconnected from that language. And I think there are cultures that aren't disconnected from that language. There are more indigenous and cultures that are untouched by modern thinking and modern traditions that
mhm,
do understand the wholeness of the person and the connectedness of mind, body, spirit, and
mm,
the meaning in everything we experience and feel. But
mhm,
modern culture, Western culture, we don't trust that. We don't know that. We don't even know that. We don't even think about
mm.
symptoms, feelings, sensations as being the wisdom of our body, telling it that something, it's meaningful. It's telling us something about ourselves. It's telling us
Right, and it's something to be
something that we
honored.
need. Yeah, exactly.
It's like when your stomach starts to growl, it's a signal that you're hungry. And
Correct.
we do so well with connecting that. We're like,
Yeah, we do, don't
"Yeah,
we?
that's what happens." Yes, but what happens when we have constant back pain or just a constant, like, foggy feeling, headache? Like, we will respond to certain things the same way as a message, but certain things we don't. We rely on only what the doctor would say is wrong with us
That's right.
and approach it, like you said, from a brokenness perspective versus, okay, it's telling me something. And what they're doing, what we're learning now is, and I'm pretty sure you're involved with it, is that sometimes a chronic type of pain with, and I've been, this is new to me. I'm exploring it. Somatic healing processes, that is sometimes tie again, like you said earlier on, a buried trauma in our subconscious or our unconscious, whichever one you refer to it as, and our body has kept the score and it's
That's right.
trying to send it, and then we just get, we're fine. We're like, we have that spinal pain, and it's 10 years, 2 decades even, and it just keeps getting worse, and all we see is we're bending over. Now, I'm not saying everybody's bent over has chronic. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't say
Yeah,
Dr. Alisa
I
had
know.
Dr. Shanks say that. But I'm just saying we get comfortable with these things. Can you respond to us and our thoughts on how we respond to these messages? Tell us how to sort of think it through.
Well, first of all, we start by just honoring that this symptom, this experience of pain, so we're talking about pain, so we can focus on that for a second,
Mhm.
is meaningful
Mhm.
and it serves a purpose. And it's not a sign that we're broken or something's terribly wrong. It's an intelligent response of the body to any number of things. Now, I think it gets complicated. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean the answer to the question, what does this mean, is a simple answer. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you don't might not want to be helped and supported in the process by somebody who understands how pain works and how it can be a signal of unresolved trauma, for instance. And part of what the brain does with pain is it uses it as a signal that will get us to safety. It
Mm,
hurts, hard to move, it's hard to stand straight, we wanna lay down. It is trying to get us quiet and get us immobilized, and at some
exactly.
because that's how it's learned to respond to, the dysfunction that's occurring that led to the pain in the first place. And the problem with the parts of the brain that respond to trauma, that support us through survival biology, is it doesn't really learn very well. So the body can continue to respond to an old trauma long past that trauma having been resolved or a traumatic
Yeah.
experience and so on. And so it does sometimes we do need support and help and intervention from somebody who can help us relearn safety in our body. And how that is done can be very different. It's going to be different for every individual, but establishing safety is always like a foundational part of healing, whether it's pain
Yes.
and whether it's chronic fatigue or other types of symptoms, the body needs to feel safe.
Yes.
And how we get there is very different from one person to the other. But I think most of us can relate to that. When we're chronically sick or suffering or in pain, we don't feel safe. We don't feel safe in our own bodies. We may have
Nope.
a lot of nervous system activation. We might be scared, anxious, easily triggered, easily upset. Suffering's a very complicated and it's a really difficult experience for people, especially in our culture. We don't know how to hold those experiences, and we don't know how to approach them very well. We medicate them. Well,
We
here's this
medicate.
pill, right? And I think that since we don't have the support we need from people who know what they're doing, we turn to strategies that really aren't that good for us.
Exactly.
You know, maybe we do just languish in pain and we don't get on with our lives. Maybe we turn to food to soothe and settle us, right? Or other unhealthy um, types of relationships to substances or activities or um, you know
Mhm.
whatever it is to self-soothe, but doesn't
Exactly.
really address the underlying dynamic of what's going on with us.
It doesn't. It doesn't, and that's where your work comes in. You talk about that language, right? Where people should understand the critical need of being seen, feeling heard, and getting involved in their own healing. What
Yes.
actually happens biologically when we don't do those, when we're not seen, when we're not heard, and not involved in our own healing?
Well, we can get back to that whole safety thing. We don't feel safe, right? We're disconnected from ourselves.
Mm,
Disconnection
yes,
is is foundationally trauma. That's
yeah,
the outcome of experiencing trauma in its many forms and not having a safe place to connect to what's going on with our bodies, receive,
mm,
connect others to support us in getting what we need. We're disconnected. And when the body doesn't feel safe, it diverts all its resources to being safe and becoming safe.
yes,
And when we devote all our energy and resources to becoming safe, there's nothing left for anything else, right? We're just constantly in a
yes,
state of biological survival, and there's nothing left over for healing, for reaching our
yes.
potential, right? For living our best lives. So we're just, and that keeps us stuck and keeps us on this downward spiral,
I
right? Because now now we no longer have the support we need for healing. It's all gone to safety.
all gone. Yes. Yes. It's almost like giving up your relinquishing your rights to your own body and your own soul. Again, not isolating them. Your entire being comes under attack in a downward spiral, as you said. All right. So we're going to do flip the script. One of my favorite parts. You've lived this and not just guided others through it. What was the mindset shift you had to make on your own healing journey, Dr. Shanks?
Wow. Exactly this. One, my body isn't wrong.
Mm,
And I've had some interesting chronic things and, I slipped through the cracks like so many, like most of my clients and, was looked at by different people just as many parts, many problems rather than,
mm,
okay, let's look at all these interesting things going on. Interesting to me, maybe not them. Let's look at all the injuries I had to joints and tendons and ligaments, like so many and so easily triggered. And let's look at the fatigue and the low blood pressure that I had for years that could be so debilitating.
mm,
How do we put that
mhm,
together? Well, there was a way to put that together. And at some point, I learned that I had a hypermobility condition known as Ehlers-Danlos
mm,
with hypermobility, which explained
mhm,
everything. And once I understood that, I knew what to do. Unfortunately, I had to figure it out myself because I didn't have doctors who could pull that together or even wanted to hear
mm,
about all those things. And not
mhm.
everybody can do that. Not everybody has the wherewithal or to even know what questions to ask as they enter everything into the AI, like ChatGPT, which I didn't have back when I figured all this out.
Right.
Yeah. So I had to learn that Western medicine doesn't do that. It doesn't look at it looks at the downstream manifestation of the larger problem and treats that and wants to fix that. So I'd
Mhm,
go in, I'd have an injury, I've had surgery, I've had, physical therapy, I've had all the things for all these separate problems that would arise without anybody looking at the whole picture. So I had to learn that there's a very different and much more powerful and meaningful way to look at myself and what's going on. And I think anyone with
yes.
series of symptoms or problems that isn't being looked at as a whole needs to find
Mhm.
who can help them look at themselves as a whole, because more than likely, they're all connected. And the other thing I learned is that we really need to go upstream as far as possible. What is the original?
Mhm.
What is that? What's the top of the mountain, the top of the iceberg? What came first? And then
Yes.
trickled down to become
Coming down.
symptoms, right? It started somewhere because the farther upstream we can focus our attention and work on,
Mm,
the more profound our outcomes are going to be. We're going to save ourselves from remaining vulnerable, even though our symptoms feel better. And an example of this is heart disease. If you have a heart attack and you're treated with the standard medications, a stent, a bypass surgery, essentially the downstream manifestations of a
Surgery.
much larger are being addressed. But we're not addressing the root cause, which has more to do with systemic inflammatory processes than something that's simply focused around the heart itself. The heart is just a downstream problem that is caused by a system wide dysfunction. So that's just an example. And most of the so-called diseases we're treated for in Western medicine are like that. We're focusing downstream. So
Yes.
that became something really important. And lastly, I'm responsible for my mindset, and I'm responsible for exercising my agency and seeking out the help, the expertise, the support that I need to be seen as this whole person, to be helped in a way that addresses me as a whole person. And that's my job.
Person.
We're going to knock on a lot of doors and not get our answers, not get our needs met. That's okay.
Yes.
We can keep trying. Who needs to be
Keep
on our
knocking.
team looking? And before you know it, you do have a team of people who see you, know you, can hold the whole story, right, of what's going on with your health for you, with you.
Exactly. Wow. My last question for you and flip the script is if you were to design a truly integrated model of care, one that honors science and the soul, what would that look like fundamentally different from what most people are experiencing today in medicine?
Yeah, well, I've created my own practice. There are a lot of ways to do that, I think. And mine is I work with people who with chronic complex illness who've completely slipped through
Mm,
the and even slipped through the cracks of many like integrative medicine situations
yes.
because you need an extraordinary amount of time. So that's the first thing. A practice that takes away the time constraints. Now, you can't do that in most settings, medical settings. So I'm really kind of off the grid. I'm not part of an institution.
Right.
I can't participate in directly with insurance companies and have contracts with them because they don't get the time.
They don't.
They don't get it, right? They don't understand.
Yes.
And then it's got to be really whole person focused. So, we're not just looking at the physical and the overtly physical and biological aspects of what's going on, but we're also looking at the entire terrain. We're looking at trauma, we're looking at nutrition, we're looking at everything. We have to look at everything. And the
Yes.
other this is that the patient has to decide what they want to do, what their agenda. They are the ones who establish what the agenda is for their own healing. So that means it's going to look different for everybody because they need to learn to be empowered and become the captains of their own ship, right? And the controller of how they see things and what their stories are about where they are, where they're going, what their potential is. So, what greater way to empower them to encourage every time we get together, encourage that leadership position that they really are in, whether they think they are or not. If you want to offload all your responsibility to somebody else, that's how you're leading yourself. Right? So that's how it looks like
Yes.
and I think there's a lot of really creative people who've done very creative things to, there are centers where there's a team of people, 10 or 15 people looking at all these different
I
aspects
love that.
of who people are
Yes.
and how that connects to what's going on with them. And they work closely together. So not one person has to do everything.
Exactly. I mean, I believe that as a humanity, that's the direction we're gonna go, and it's just gonna keep getting better and better because the need is becoming stronger. But you created a beautiful tool, as a representative of your work that you're doing right now in the book, Unbroken: Reclaim Your Wholeness. Uh, Festo to healing in a world that keep us sick and suffering and stuck. If you can tell us, because this book is very practical and it has actual guided practices to
Mhm.
help people sustain resilience, can you tell us a little bit about what we can experience by just starting our journey to treating ourselves as a whole being and with this book that you've given us to get going?
Yeah. So what you'll find is there's three main parts. And the first part is the context for why we think of ourselves as broken when we're sick, which I think is really
Mm,
understanding. It's a powerful way to break through a story that you may not have thought was a story, right?
mhm.
So, it has historical and political roots. And I think it can be very helpful. I know my clients really need to feel justified if they're going to switch their mindset because they're intelligent human beings. So
Right.
I'm not going to just give them another party line. I'm going to tell them, this is where this idea of us being many parts, many problems came from. And
Mhm.
really, we're innately whole. We've just become disconnected from all of the aspects of who we are. So that's the first part is, we don't insult anybody's intelligence. We're going to give you, I'm going to give you some context for you to start to play with this of shifting your mindset. And then there's a big discussion about the second part is the evidence that we are already whole, that we are already intelligent, that we are packed to the brim with untapped potential and possibilities. And that's the science of epigenetics, neuroplasticity, what we've learned in transformational psychology, and so on. And then there's this entire practical side that contains what I call the core resilience stepping stones and just gentle discussions about, you know, 9 stepping stones or areas of your life where you can begin to use your new mindset of unbrokenness and begin to shift these areas of your life to really activate your epigenetic potential and shift from an equilibrium of suffering, disease, pain, feeling stuck into an equilibrium that feels more resilient, that feels
Mm.
more. And for many people, that's all they need to do is it to basically deeply address a chronic illness.
So well said. So we're at Mindset Bites to go. This is our last segment where I step away from the camera and the audio and you just speak directly to our guests. And my question for you today, what are 3 first steps that they can take right now if they're feeling exhausted, discouraged, and honestly just tired of trying with maybe a chronic illness or just feeling stuck?
Yeah.
Some 3 steps to help them move back to wholeness. And if you had to replace that limiting belief of I'm broken, what would it be?
Well, I think first of all, acknowledge where you're at and just hold where you feel you're at in your journey of healing and just let it be. Accept it for what it is. This is where I am. Um, and I think this is part of a practice of just being present to what you're experiencing right now without judgment, without an urgency around fixing it or changing it, but just self acceptance. I think that's one of the most compassionate things that we can do for ourselves. And it's also the road to safety. And I think creating safety is the foundation of all healing. So create a container of safety for yourself by just checking in, letting what you find be okay in that moment, holding it with compassion, not trying to change or fix it. And then I think the next step, I think if we can make that checking in process kind of a ritual, a daily ritual, is to then become curious and begin to ask, okay, what is my body trying to tell me? I'm scared. What's my body trying to tell me? I feel exhausted. What's my body trying to tell me? And just being curious, suspending the beliefs you have about where you're at, the beliefs that you've had all along, perhaps, about what's going on with you. I'm broken. I'm in pain. I'm stuck. I'm miserable. I'm suffering. And begin to look at it with curiosity. Curiosity puts you into a beginner's mind. And only with the beginner's mind can you begin to learn more about what's going on with you and what your body is trying to tell you. Beginner's mind gives you permission to not have to know everything all the time. And it's going to open you to insights and new directions and new ways of looking at yourself. And so that's a lot to do right there. That's a lot. That's a lot to do to jumpstart a healing practice. But I think it's the foundation. So a presence practice, checking in, letting what you find be okay initially, and then having curiosity. And I think once you're at the curiosity part, to literally, like, when you check in, you might say something like, I'm right here. So that is a signal to the body that you're there and you're listening. And it's a safety signal. It's very important for the part of the brain that's in charge of survival biology to hear that from you, that you are there, you are listening. And then the second thing would be to ask, what do you need? And you could talk directly to your whole body and your whole being. You can speak directly to a symptom, pain, for instance. What do you need? And then let the question go, because it's very unlikely you're going to get an answer in that moment. Some people do. I'm jealous. Let that question percolate, and it will. You've just dropped it into your consciousness. And you might be surprised what comes up when you begin to actually ask, check in and ask. And asking is also a safety signal to your brain. It says, I'm not just attuned to you, but I'm asking about you and I'm listening. I think that those are the foundations of healing that will lead you back to your wholeness, that will jumpstart any healing process, will allow you to, like, begin to claim agency so that you ask for help in the right directions. You don't put all your eggs in one basket, but don't put all your eggs in one basket that just doesn't get you and isn't helpful. Yeah, that that's the way to really launch a healing journey. Thank you.
So many good transformational nuggets. I am telling you, I'm so glad I met her and I believe in what she's doing because that whole approach, that wholeness is what we seek here at everything I do and what I approach. Even when I'm teaching workforce, I'm always talking about trauma informed, getting your alignment and understanding that you are one person. And I actually say to our listeners and viewers, Dr. Karyn, that demand more from your service people. Like, and sometimes it's not only the demand, it's also you creating the oneness in the flow. When you're speaking to your MD, include what you believe to be for you spiritually, whatever your beliefs are. And so just by including it and having a conversation, a lot of people, because they may not know, might stray from it. But it does bring consideration to thought and it allows for the conversation to include you as a whole person, even if they don't offer you a resolution. And again, one of the big things you said, Dr. Karyn, is keep knocking, you'll find your people. You will find the right place and the right people if you seek to keep yourself as a whole and treat yourself as a whole person. Keep seeking and you will find that spot. That's the only way in 2015 I was able to finally get a, um, a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis for what was truly happening in my body, for why I couldn't have children. And then IVF was a part of my process. And then my body aborted the fetuses. And the reason why, it's because my body looked at being pregnant as a disease that was making me sick. To save my life, stop supply to the uterus. And I did not know that, but I was on the verge of doing another round of IVF. And I just felt no. And I am so glad I listened and went all out until I find a doctor who would look at me holistically and look at all the things that was happening to me mentally, physically, emotionally, historically, medically. And testing was done in the right direction. Otherwise, my blood work was showing I was fine. They were treating me for symptoms, high blood pressure, diabetic, you name it. They're treating me for all these things. But then all of a sudden, I'll go back 6 months later. Nothing's changed, but they can't find that I have diabetes. My blood is fine. My blood work. So it was just a wild ride. And so when you don't necessarily want to wait. If you're listening to Dr. Karyn today, you don't have to wait for doctors to treat you wholly or a physician. You have to first come over the limiting beliefs that you are parts, right? Dr. Karyn, that's what she told us. If you can work through that limitation for yourself. And my thing is, since you've heard it from her first, go grab a copy of the book and begin your journey. I got a copy a few months ago and I did not start reading it in its entirety yet. It's on my March reading because I do read at least one book per month. And I do. I didn't check to see if it's available on Audible. Is it available on Audible, Dr.
Yes,
Karyn?
I just got the word that Audible takes a long time to get new
It
books
does.
through their pipeline. And I just got word that it's theirs. Yeah.
So that's awesome because that's why I got a copy of the book off of Amazon, but
Right.
I'm a big Audible reader. So
Okay.
that's how I get through sometimes even 2 to 3 books per month. But I just am slowing it down to 1 because that way I can really take my time and do work. Because I read practical books like yours that really helps me implement, and it does take 21 days. So I'm not saying rush through to try to take on everything, but you can decide and work on one so you create those new mindset and ways of thinking around the limitations you have for yourself holistically. So Dr. Karyn, tell us how to get a copy of your book. What's your favorite way to stay connected with you? And I think there was something that you had for our guests to download. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
My website has lots of, I think, really helpful free things.
Yes.
So that's KarynShanksMD.com. KarynShanksMD.com. The book is available in print, audio, as well as ebook. And I did the audio, I narrated it myself.
Yay.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but I did it, so it's my
that's
voice.
good. Yes.
It's available everywhere. So if you don't like to, order things from Amazon, which is fine, it's available at all the major book, including the audio.
And we will put the links here, of course, to her website and to the various places where you can grab a copy of the book. I would love to have Dr. Karyn back once I'm done reading so we can talk a little bit more about some of the main things in the book. Dr. Karyn, I just want to thank you so much for your time today and for this conversation right here. Because mindset mastery does matter. Healing doesn't start actually with fixing what's wrong, but it's with reclaiming and taking charge of our own well-being as a whole person, right?
Right. That is correct. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you for bringing both the clinical rigor and keeping humanity into a space that we all desperately need right now. And for everyone listening, you can absolutely, again, learn more about Dr. Shanks and her work at KarynShanksMD.com. And I highly recommend her book, Unbroken, Reclaim Your Wholeness. If you're ready to stop outsourcing your power and start listening to your body right now, listening it to differently and taking those messages to mean an invitation, right? So keep mastering your mindset. Think, speak, do become. I'm Dr. Alisa, your #1 mindset disruptor, and we'll see you on the next episode of Mindset Mastery Moments. Bye now.